Hi everyone, welcome back to SmugMug Live. I'm your host Alistair Jolly. Thank you so much for joining us today wherever you are in the world. As always, SmugMug Live is brought to you by SmugMug and by Flickr. So if you're looking for somewhere to store your images online, host your images and showcase them to the world, or have an incredible e-commerce solution, then check out everything we have to offer at smugmug.com. Or if you're looking to be part of an incredible photo community, then please check out everything we offer at flickr.com. So as I said, thank you for joining me today. This is episode 78 of SmugMug Live, and we've got a wonderful guest joining me in just a moment. But before that, there's always the favors I ask of you. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here of SmugMug Live. And of course, don't forget, if you're joining us live, to get into that chat window and give yourself a shout out. Let us know what part of the world you're joining from. And of course, if you have any questions today for our guest, then please put them in the chat window and I'll be sure to get to those questions at some point during today's chat. So I see some of you already in that chat window, and if you're enjoying the live streams, then please also give it a thumbs up. That really helps support what we do here at SmugMug Live. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's guest. She is a travel photographer, a passionate outdoors woman, a blogger, writer, adventurer, the list goes on. But it is my pleasure to welcome to the show Erin Sullivan. Hi Erin, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I am good, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining me today. I'm glad you're keeping
Oh,
well.
happy to. I am happy to. Me and the leaf blowers. Anyone in LA will know. The leaf blowers are constant here, so I'm sorry if you hear them. But
That's okay. It's funny,
um,
you did mention that, but Erin and I were chatting and we said, let's do it on Thursday. And she said, oh, Thursday's leaf blower day. It's definitely the day the leaf blowers are around here. So we're just going to have to live with them. It's it's LA. What can you do?
it's work from home life. So
Yeah, we're used to all that stuff, whether it's leaf blowers or kids running about in the background or, cars. Here, if we, depending on how long we stay, we might hear the ice cream vehicles that go up and down my street. So if you want ice cream,
nice,
maybe it'll happen. So
perfect.
we find you in LA today, yes? Is that home?
Yes, LA is home for me. I just moved into a new place, so I have an office and a studio now to make my miniature photos, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I've been in LA for, gosh, the majority of the last year, which is more than I've ever spent here, even though I've been based here for just about 3.5 years.
Yeah, I think as we've said many times, we've all been where we are for longer than we normally are because we can't travel quite as much. And in yourself, you're so well known as Erin Outdoors, someone who's passionate about the outdoors and loves to travel. So it's been a very different year for you as it has been for all of us. Yeah, have you been coping okay?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, a year ago was when my calendar just started to dissolve. I was just watching all of my commercial jobs and brand jobs cancel as we were learning more about COVID-19 and figuring out how all these different countries were going to deal with it. And so I started to think about, like, okay, well, how can I stay creative? How can I stay connected to travel and the outdoors and the things that I really love about traveling, which is really like empathy, other cultures, the way that nature makes you feel. And so I created ways to keep those passions alive at home, and then also connected with my community in new ways, and started to, I don't know, think of ways to pivot my business, not just in what I'm shooting, but what I'm offering to the world in terms of art. So, and I'm continuing to do that. So,
Yeah, there's a
yeah.
nice opportunity to think about these and give us the luxury of a little bit of time to think about these things. But we'll get to the project that is known as the Great Indoors later on in the show. That's what a lot of us are here to see. But I think it's probably best if we start by exploring some of the images you're typically known for and letting people that don't know you have a little insight into the type of photography that you typically do. But before we do that, let's see who's joining us today. A lot of people giving themselves a shout out in the chat window here. Randy Pollock, hi Randy, thanks for joining again. Says looking forward to today's guest. Gail is joining us from Surrey in BC, up in Canada. Barbara is joining us from New York. Hi, Barbara. Thank you for joining us. Raymond is joining us from the Netherlands. Hope Holland, as they say. Mooi, Bob is joining us from New Jersey. My apologies, New Jersey. Hey, Bob. Good to see you. Ramez is joining us from Amman in Jordan. Beautiful part of the world. Have you been to Jordan?
Not yet.
Beautiful part of the world, as is Lincolnshire in England. Hi Patrick, thanks for joining. Appreciate you being here. So lots of people giving themselves shout outs. Feel free to do that as we continue our conversation. And if you have any questions, as I mentioned earlier, post them in the chat window. You can help me find it by starting your question with the word question. That way when I'm scrolling through, it makes it easier to find it in amongst the chat. But thank you for that. So, outdoors woman, adventurer, traveller. Let's have a little look at some images now that probably best represent the Erin that I knew prior to the pandemic, right? The type of work that you did. So maybe you can talk to us about some of these images we've selected today to showcase your work. Would this have been a fairly typical image that Erin would have been photographing?
I think so. I mean, so for anyone who doesn't know me, my background is in outdoor education and adventure trip leading. So I led trips for 7 years on and off for teenagers around the world, which I refer to as extreme babysitting, because it is very demanding, very rewarding. You can get burnt out very quickly with that kind of a job. But it allowed me to see a lot of the world, and I really loved the personal development aspect of it, facilitating growth and helping somebody through a period of change in their life, which if you're a teenager, you're still figuring out who you are. I mean, I think as adults, we still do that, but figuring out who you are as a teenager, you know, going through middle school or high school, there's a lot of pressure there. And so it was a really transformative part of my life to do that. And it also helped me to fall in love with nature and the places that I was leading trips.
That's really
that first photo is from a trip to Alaska with Sony, which I think you have a few other images from that trip in here. But I really like I love shooting with a telephoto lens because I love to compress layers just to show scale. So this was Lake Clark National Park in Alaska.
It's beautiful. I love that phrase you just used about extreme babysitting. Many moons ago when I was a teenager, I was a camp counselor at a summer camp in Pennsylvania, and I did that too. Extreme babysitting. That is just about the perfect phrase for for what we did. 8 weeks those kids were at camp for, and
wow,
talk about burnout. It's great fun. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But
exactly.
Good memories. Yeah,
tons of fun, but you need
you're ready for the break
energy.
after a full summer of camp counseling for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the images, the beautiful, beautiful images. This one, I said to you off camera, this is on my bucket list. Namibia is just one of those places I am desperate to visit. It must have been such a great experience to be there.
Yes, such an amazing trip. And again, this is another one that I shot with a telephoto lens. So this is on a 100 to 400, I believe. But I love to compress the layers and just kind of add an element of abstraction to it.
Yeah, and these sand dunes in Namibia, they just lend themselves to that when you have these little single trees in this contrast of the dark side and the light side of the dunes. It's on my list. I have to do it. I love that S-curve you have in there as well. Really great.
Totally. The sand dunes are incredible and they're huge too.
Yeah, monsters. Yeah. And then you also do a lot of wildlife stuff as well on your travels.
Yes, I love to photograph wildlife. There's just nothing like making eye contact with an animal. Wherever you are in the world. I think it's such a reminder of the world that we come from, that we're a part of, that we're not separate from it. So this is a cheetah having a little snooze on a termite mound. This cheetah was actually on a reserve where she wears a collar so they can track her movements. So I had to do just like a tiny bit of Photoshop to remove the antenna from her collar.
Yeah, that's she looks really comfortable. That's kind of what I'm going to look like a little bit later today on the couch.
Yes. Good, same.
And then some beautiful awe moments, although a very dangerous animal, but they are cute.
Yes, so this is a mom brown bear and a cub behind her. This is also on that trip to Lake Clark National Park in Alaska. And I've spent a few months total in Alaska, but this trip was definitely a highlight. So the bears were, this is pre-hibernation, so they were just not interested in us at all. And we're on a boat as well with a guide. And so they're interested in fish. So they're
just want to eat. That's all they want to do is get fish.
It's
probably the most dangerous bear, though, a mother bear with a cub. That's probably the most dangerous situation. But if they're in the river hunting and fishing.
What they say. They say mothers and cubs and adolescent males.
Yeah. But, oh my goodness, they are cute.
So cute. This is one of the cubs. And this is like a crowd favorite for sure.
Yeah. One of those awe moments. Oh,
easy to see why. Yeah, so cute.
Yeah, just like the perfect. It's like perfect.
Little ears.
Perfect hair, perfect ears. That's absolutely incredible. And then this is why they're in the river, right?
Yeah, and you can see that the fish is kind of rotting. So some of the fish had already, swam upstream and
spawned and died.
Yeah, died. Yeah. And but the bears were just going after whatever they could get, and some of them were already floating, so easy catch.
As long as they're not going after you and going after the fish, that's
true.
The important part.
No, they could not have cared less. They were like, so. Huh? Yeah,
too difficult. Easy prey in the water of the fish, especially if they're floating there.
It's true.
Where's this one?
This
Africa.
one is, on the Masai Mara in Kenya. Just one of those moments. I mean, when I think about photography, it's really a tool to learn how to see, so that when that moment comes, you can photograph it and you can capture it, right? You can capture the moment, the fleeting moment that you're seeing with your eyes, but it requires you to train your eyes to know when to press that button, so that you're not just like losing yourself in photographing it and losing the experience, which is what my TED Talk is about. But this was definitely one that I was like, you have to be kidding me. Like the giraffe standing so perfectly under the tree, like, wow. So. Yeah.
Even the angle of its neck is just
right.
Perfect, and a lot going on. You mentioned there your TED Talk. It's a good point to talk about it, seeing as you brought it up. But tell us a little bit about that and how that all came about and what you cover in your TED Talk, so folk can get excited about going to watch it afterwards.
So a couple summers ago, I got an email with the subject line, "Invite to speak at TED." And I was like,
no way.
You have to be kidding me. I mean, like that's like a life goal of mine for sure. And so many people, and they had seen a mini series that I was hosting for a client of mine, REI. And in the mini series, which was called In Our Nature, we, every episode, we asked a question about the future of the outdoors. And the first episode is social media ruining the outdoors? And we never tried to make a conclusive point with each episode. We didn't, we just tried to present a lot of information on every side of it. And the TED curator had seen that and thought it would be really interesting to expand on. So working with them, I fleshed out this idea and this other question of, does photographing a moment steal the experience from you? Are we so focused on getting the shot that we're losing the moment for ourselves personally? So that was what I wanted to explore. And sometimes, and the title of the talk, which people might not know this, when you give a TED Talk, you don't decide the title, they do. And they don't decide it until after you've given it.
I was going to say, did they come up with it after you've given the talk and they kind of analyse the talk? That's interesting. So
exactly.
what did they pick?
Does photographing a moment steal the experience from you?
Right.
Question mark. And it's a question, but it also, they removed like, I think 1.5 minutes from it also. Like it's shorter than it was how I wrote it, which great. And that's TED. I don't know about TEDx because TEDx is by each individual thing. But anyway, one of the most remarkable experiences of my life for sure.
Yeah, it's a goal for a lot of people. So, you know, I've already ticked that one off. That's awesome. And I have watched it. And it's a very interesting, thought-provoking piece. And it's something I have thought about a lot personally as a photographer. I came, you know, my career in photography was as a social photographer, so wedding predominantly world. And I used to watch people at, you know, family weddings, the most important day of people's lives, and you know, they were lost in taking pictures rather than being part of it and leaving it to the professional photographer to do their job. But you know, a lot of people were, you know, just like every event, you know, watching it through this little screen, even though it's happening right in front of them, you know. So I fully get that kind of idea.
I didn't want the talk to be like a conclusive stop being on your phone all the time piece. I really wanted it to feel like a question, because maybe the answer for you is no. I mean, I've had experiences where I'm taking pictures and it brings me further into the moment. It makes me more intentional. But it's about having that intention, I think. So that's really what I wanted to emphasize with the talk.
It is really good and very, very thought-provoking, which was your point. And for a lot of us, for me, you know, part of the joy of being somewhere is taking the photographs. So that's why I want to be there in the first place. So it isn't a conclusive thing, you know, where it has a yes/no answer. And even for us, it probably changes. Some days it may be necessary. Some days we don't want to take photographs. We just want to sit there and watch the incredible sunset or listen to the sounds or whatever it may be. So interesting, but I highly recommend people go check out Erin's TED Talk, because it's not very often I get to say that about guests, that they have a TED Talk. So that's pretty cool. Right, let's go back to some more images and we'll get through some of these images and then we'll get to your great indoors content. Now, this is a whole other environment. This is
so a couple years ago, I was really curious about shooting underwater. This is a personal goal that I wanted to do. It's not something that I had ever done before. I never shot with housing or and I also am not a very good free diver. I have issues like getting the pressure right with my ears, even though I scuba, but free diving, I'm just not the best, just kind of a mess. But one of my friends leads tours in Tonga, photographing humpback whales. And so I was like, I'm going to do it this year. So I just booked the trip like 9 months out, thought, okay, well, I'm going to force myself to do it and figure it out. So I went, and this was after we stopped at a cave on the way back to where we were staying. And this is my friend Cherise, who's a very talented free diver. And I just had asked her to swim up this part of the cave where the light was.
Yeah,
exactly.
Beautiful. I guess if you have a friend who does tours that are about humpback whales, it's the kind of friend that you very quickly say, yeah, I'm coming to.
Right. Yep. exactly.
Figure it out later. That's an opportunity of a lifetime there, and this is why you get shots like this. Let me just refresh
Yeah.
that a little bit. There we go. Incredible. Not just one, but you have something about mothers and babies. I think.
Ah, I do. And I have a lot of that actually in my catalog, a lot of moms and babies, which is interesting. But yeah, this is mom humpback whale with her calf. So they go to the warm waters of the South Pacific um, to basically so that the calf can grow.
Plenty of
Sometimes
food.
they have, yeah, sometimes they have an escort with them, which is just like a solitary male that
Really,
swims alongside them or below them just to like keep an eye out, which is really interesting.
that is very interesting. Didn't know that. So
Yeah,
a
but they're
bodyguard.
yeah, pretty much a bodyguard.
That's
Um,
cool.
and this is I took this at the surface, so I didn't have to really dive. And a lot of the time with humpback whales, you don't want to dive because the mom can get spooked. But once the
Yeah.
mom is, if the mom is comfortable with you, I didn't have this experience, but my friend who guides these trips will often have an experience where the mom will be like, "Oh, thank God you're here! Like, take them, like take the calf, like and swim." And she'll dive down underneath, and the calf will just play with the humans.
Wow. I hear
You
you
know,
do extreme babysitting. Could you look after this little one for me?
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. It and so he told me that sometimes it does feel that way. Sometimes you feel like, oh, okay, so we're the toys now. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Mum needs a little time out. Go play with the human on the surface. Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Right.
But what an incredible experience.
Oh, totally. And they're really massive. I mean, she's the size of a school bus.
Yeah.
Um, but so peaceful, so peaceful and so incredible. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier of making eye contact with
Can
an
imagine.
animal, especially an animal like this, is so amazing and so tremendous, and reminds you of your connection to nature.
Absolutely. This I couldn't. Two images of this scene because I couldn't choose which one I wanted to showcase today. But this is quite incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorite images that I took last year. So I was in Mexico for more underwater photography. I really wanted to photograph sea lions because I think they're so fun and charismatic. Um, and when I got there, I was told that there were mobula rays around, which is the type of rays these are. And I never photographed rays before,
Yeah.
I love the geometric shapes and the light and like the way that they swim together and they gather together. So I was hoping we would see them. And what's really funny about these is like the way that you spot them is because they fly. So they
Oh,
kind of
really?
and they'll jump like feet into the air and they
So you
go,
see them above the
whoa.
surface, and you know where they are.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so funny because they like go up like this and they like flap around,
Yeah.
and then they smack down back in the water. So
Wow.
we were super lucky to see them and swim alongside them for a while. And this is another one that you don't really dive down with. I guess it depends on the group, but
Yeah.
at
Looks like
least for
there's
us,
thousands of them there.
there could have been, and the
Yeah.
water clarity wasn't great. I would say probably 500 at
Yeah.
least.
Incredible. What sort of size are they?
Could have been more. They are, it's hard to tell. I would actually have to give it a Google to actually
Right.
be accurate because your depth perception
Of
can be
course.
really off under the water. But how they felt, I would say like 4 or 5 feet wide.
4 or 5 feet wide. Yeah. Kind of arm span
That's how they
wide.
felt. But I'm gonna Google it afterwards and see. Am I right?
Yeah. Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. And we have another one. I love the composition you've given this one with the rays, the light rays going down onto the rays. It just feels otherworldly, and it's almost like they're all stacked up just perfectly.
Yeah.
Probably the fact
It
it's a still photographer, a still image without the motion of them. It's very easy to kind of lose. perspective of what this actually is in this image. But I love it, absolutely love it.
It's true. I love doing that. I think black and white is a good tool to do that with. It's just like that level of abstraction, removing one element of the context, and so that you really have to ask, what is that, you know? But this one, I think, feels like flying, because that's how it feels when you're with them. You know, you're watching them fly. So it's pretty amazing.
That is cool. We've got some other people joining us. I'd like to give them a little shout out.
Oh, great.
While we
Hello.
pause. Hi, Richard. Good to see you, Richard Terborg, who's a SmugMug ambassador, joining us from Amsterdam.
Oh, cool.
Thank you for joining us this evening in Amsterdam. Joel is joining us from Niagara Falls in Canada, epic part of the world. Freddie is joining us from Switzerland. Hi, Freddie. And then we have a question from Raymond. Thank you for starting your question with the word question, Raymond. I appreciate that. Helps me a lot. He says, are you inspired by photographers like Franz Lanting because your beautiful pictures have that artistic touch?
Thanks,
Familiar
Raymond.
with Franz?
Yes, I am, for sure. Definitely. I mean, his bird work is really beautiful. Yes, my background, though I was a trip leader and like a tour guide for a while in my early 20s, I went to art school, and I created a double major in visual arts and environmental studies. So I've always kind of worked at the intersection of art and science. And that's really what inspires and fulfills me and like fuels me, is creating art that reflects what exists in the natural world. So I'm always looking to document what I see when I'm traveling or in the outdoors or photographing wildlife, but in a way that does present it artistically, in an aesthetically pleasing way, and I'm sure does call back to some of those artistic principles that I learned in art school, whether it was in, sculpture or painting or, color theory I use all the time. So it's like that base knowledge definitely helped me moving into my photography career.
Yeah, no, I mean, that base knowledge is, oh man, it must be so beneficial for many people. A lot of us fell into photography without having those kind of basic art principles behind us, and kind of learned them and on the road kind of thing. So yeah, that's a
Right.
huge benefit if you have that background. And images like this one, it's clear to see your kind of color knowledge
Yes.
and your color theory, your sense of rhythm and pattern within images. It's definitely a
Thank
very artistic
you.
feel to it. I love this
I
image.
mean, something like this, and also I wanted to say I didn't study photography at all in college, which is so funny. But not surprising that I ended up in photography, because it was like a longtime passion of mine
Sure.
as a teenager. So this is also in Namibia, and this is dead Valley from above, directly above. And what I find so interesting about this, and in a lot of my other work, is looking for shapes that repeat in nature. So obviously, this looks like a tree. It also looks like veins or like roots, but it's sand on the right and then salt on the left. It's also warm and cool. And the contrast is really fun to play with. So I'm looking for themes of how things in nature relate to other things and how we're all connected.
Yeah, well, definitely. And let me just see if I can go back here. Raymond, thank you for an excellent answer. So thank you for the question.
Thank
Keep the questions
you.
coming, folks, if you want to ask more questions. And I want to point out, with images like this one, and a lot of the images that we'll go through maybe a bit quicker than we have been, so that we can get to the great outdoors images.
Right.
There's a lot of what you talk about, that desire to see pattern and texture and that type of stuff, that for me it is represented or recreated within that series for the great indoors.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll definitely get to those. Let's see, moving on. Out of
Ooh,
this world.
Yes, this was in Uluru, Australia, on a very dark night, probably on a new moon. And gosh, the stars were just so bright. And in my images, I just want to remind us, like, we live on an amazing planet. So
Yeah, indeed.
I just chose this dead tree as a silhouette to keep it interesting.
Give it some scale as well. For sure.
Right, and show like this planet
Yeah.
outside this planet, you know?
Yeah. It's incredible now that we can actually go look at live footage from Mars looking back at this planet.
I
Kind of
know.
blows my mind at the moment. And listen to the wind, the Martian
Yeah,
winds. It's an incredible time. Incredible time. Now, something else I've
sure.
noticed in a lot of your images is not just this desire to go somewhere and take a picture of it, but this desire to kind of entrench yourself a little bit in the culture and the details and the everyday of the places that you're at. And I see a lot of this in your images where you're being part of the community when you travel.
I try. I think that there's an inherent power dynamic in photography. When you're the one that holds the camera, you're the one that holds the power, right? And I think we have to be mindful as travelers. So this is Nancy on the right and Faith. Their names are actually Maasai names,
Sure.
not English names. Nancy's Maasai name is Nemama. Faith's, I don't think I ever learned. But I was having chai with them after photographing their work, their beaders. So they bead like bracelets and everything that Nemama is wearing on the right. For a nonprofit that they work with to sell all their wares.
Right.
So we were just having chai around the fire and the sun was setting and got lucky with this photo.
It's a beautiful moment, just the joy, the kind of end of day moment, right? It's the relaxed part of the day.
Yes.
Really, really beautiful moment in a beautiful part of the world with a beautiful community they have there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, some more cultural type images. I tried to group some of these to represent that feeling I had about how you entrench yourself.
I try. I mean, there's a balance between, like, you want to photograph what you're seeing, but you also need to respect your subjects, which usually involves asking for permission to take their photo, it's like if their face is in it, especially like this is in Morocco. And Moroccans, typically in Morocco, like they don't want their pictures taken of their face. So this was an especially important one. But this was one of our guides. I was hosting a trip with my friend Demetrius, who I sometimes host group trips with, and we had brought a group to Morocco, and this was in Erg Chebi in the desert. This is a moment from Myanmar, from a temple where it was bustling. Like there were so many people, and I just saw this moment. But again, like a question of, do you take the picture or do you like stop and ask permission? I didn't ask this monk permission, so I could be wrong for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it worth it to have the image and like share the image with the world? Maybe. I don't have the answers, but I think it's important to ask the question, to think about it as photographers.
It is. It's definitely important. More important now probably than ever to ask those questions. But great moments, and another beautiful moment. A lot of real and beautiful light. I mean, I know photography is about light, but this image, it would have been so easy to get that beautiful light on the subject. But in fact, what you're helping here is by having the light on the fishing net, you're helping tell that story of what he does, and putting him into silhouette. I really like that.
Okay, sorry for everyone, just got that zoomed in on my face. But you can see, I don't know if you can zoom in, Alistair, but you can see the drops of water, how he's like wringing it out. And that was really like exciting to me. And that was like so golden, the netting.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a fisherman in Myanmar, on, oh, I forget the name of the lake, but it's the lake with Ubane's bridge over it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. It's somewhere I've never been, so I don't know. But I just love the way you'd chosen to light this and expose for the story rather than the person. Really liked it.
Thank you.
And again, these little details of places you've been and little this kind of little peeks behind the curtain, of how other people are living and stuff like that. It's cool.
Yeah, this was for a project for Cathay Pacific, the airline. They were we were highlighting places in China that are not the most popular. So this was, we flew into Xiamen, which is a city, and then we were touring the ancient Tulou buildings, which are like those circular buildings with like layers, and it's multi-family home. And this was this was a square or a rectangular one, and the incense was burning right in the middle. It was a cold morning, and so the smoke was like extra, I don't know, billowy.
Beautiful moment. Right, I've got a gear question for you, which is cool. We do like gear. We sometimes kid on, we don't, but we all like gear.
We do.
Patrick asks, great photos, but a question, do you travel light gear-wise? So,
great question,
what's
Patrick.
In the bag? Yeah.
What's in the bag? Well, first I shoot Sony, so it helps to have mirrorless. I mean, of course, everybody is seemingly offering mirrorless now, so maybe everyone has a light option, but I typically bring 2 camera bodies, my primary and a backup, and then I bring zoom lenses usually. So the 24-70 always comes, 100-400 usually comes, or 70-200. So like the 24-70 is the general, the basic, like capture all that's always on my camera.
Yep.
A telephoto, so the 70-200 or the 100-400, and then something like specialized for the trip usually. So if I need a wide, if I know I'm going to shoot like big mountains, big cities, the 16-35, or sometimes I'll bring a macro, sometimes I'll bring like a nice prime if I know that I'm shooting portraits. So pretty light. I mean, I usually want all of my camera gear to fit in my backpack, in my carry-on. I don't want to have to bring Pelican cases with me. That said, if I'm on a special trip or special assignment or something, and I know that I really need to have all of my options, then I will do that.
Yeah, and it's getting lighter all the time, which is good. But that just means we take more. We take the same weight, we just take more gear.
It's true. I mean, the underwater trips, those are pretty, like, I have to take a lot of stuff on those because, because you have the housing, then I have the lens that fits in the housing, then I have my land camera, so I have another camera body, usually with a telephoto, so that a trip like that, you end up with a lot of gear.
Yeah, indeed. Couple of shout outs. JVNS, welcome. He's joining us from Mexico. Mac is joining us from Nairobi in Kenya.
Hey, Mac.
Thank you for joining us. And then a couple of questions. Hey, Gary. Gary's a frequent viewer of the show. Good to see you back, Gary. How much of a shot is planned versus capturing in the moment?
Great question, Gary. For me, most of my work is in the moment, unless I'm with someone else who had it planned, but I rarely am, actually. I don't really like posing people. I do it sometimes if I have to, but it's not my preference. I really like to shoot what I find. Because it feels most true to me. That said, I've been doing a lot of planned work recently because I've been shooting miniatures, which we'll get into in a bit. But in terms of this work that we're talking about now and showing now, that's all captured in the moment.
Yeah. And then before we get to the indoor miniature stuff, question from JVNS. How do you choose your focal length? Is it like you go all day with one length, or do you change it constantly?
It depends on what the thing is. I typically will have, I start the day usually with my 24 to 70 on, because I think that that's like closest to my eyeballs, you know, it's like closest to what I see.
Yeah.
But what helps me is really stopping to see before I look through the viewfinder. So really stopping to like put both of my feet down, observe what's happening around me, look at all the little moments, look at what's happening in the background, in the foreground, with this person over here, with this animal over here. And then asking like, which moments do I want to share? Like, which moments do I want to make it into images? And often I'll switch to a telephoto because I find something in the background that's interesting, whether that's like layers of mountains, even clouds, or something that the sun is doing, birds, you know. But what the decisions that I make with the focal length first really depends on what do I see around me and some really like keen observation.
Yeah, it's a great skill to learn to see the picture and then choose the focal length rather than let the focal length dictate the image, which a lot of us can
Exactly.
fall into that trap. Right, we're going to get to the miniature stuff right now, but last question before we move on, because it's relevant to just now. Joel asks, I'm
Yeah.
looking for an underwater housing. What is a good one to start out with? Any advice for
Hey,
Joel?
Joel. Yeah. I use Icolite, which is Ikelite, and that's pretty good. It's not cheap, but it's not like the most expensive one. There's also something called Sea Frogs that I know a lot of people
Okay.
use, if you'd like to have a even more budget option.
Yeah.
And
Trick
then
is not to
also
go.
like
Go ahead.
sorry, what? Oh, making sure that you don't that your camera is available with
Yeah.
whatever brand, of course, you know, because sometimes depending on the camera.
Yeah. I was going to say that underwater, you don't want to go too cheap, right? That's, you know,
It's true. You really don't. I mean, that said, I don't know. Icolite doesn't always have the best reputation, to be honest. But if you want to go up from Icolite,
it's a
you're
big jump.
spending another $3,000 or $4,000 on your housing.
Yeah. Nobody
So
said photography was inexpensive, that's for sure.
it's true. They did not promise that to us.
Right, I'm going to show, I've got a couple of images I want to show because I think they lead really nicely into your series of images called The Great Indoors. And these are a couple of images from your outdoor portfolio. But
Yes.
I just picked these because I want people to look at these images and recognize how you use scale and leading lines and, you know, just the shapes that you use in your outdoor photography. And then how, in my view, how you've, you know, like, you know, taken that to a whole other place and to a whole other context. But these images, as well as being stunningly beautiful images in their own right, I thought these spoke to what you've done with the series that you titled The Great Indoors. So tell us, before we show some, tell us a little bit about The Great Indoors, what it is and how it all came about and how it ended up going viral.
Sure. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, during the pandemic, I obviously was not traveling or having, you know, my same client work as I had been used to or what I was working towards. And so I had asked myself, how can I stay creative? How can I stay connected to the outdoors? And something that I would do as a kid, if I couldn't sleep or if I was bored, I would imagine tiny adventure scenes in the corner of my house. So under my sheets, I would imagine like little snowy mountains, and I'd like imagine skiing down them, you know. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good time to tune into my imagination to really use that. So I decided to do a personal project where I would make outdoor scenes using household items. And that's how it's Our Great Indoors
Our
was
Great Indoors,
born,
sorry.
because The Great Indoors, people call it this, that
Yeah.
too. But after I had done 3 scenes, I recognized that this was really resonating with people, and I
Yeah.
wanted to invite them to try it. So in order to make it a hashtag, it had to be something like fairly unique. So I thought Our Great Indoors was a good name for it, because then we could all share under that hashtag, and it could
Yeah.
like live under a name, in terms of Our Great Indoors as my project, and then also as this community-based challenge that it became.
Yeah, it did, and a lot of people. It really resonated with a lot of us, and we loved it. So let's have a look at some of these images, and I think everybody will really. If you haven't seen these yet, you're going to love these images. So here's the first one.
Yeah, so this is the first one that I did. So it's like an ice cave, right? And I did this with pillows. Actually, this is all pillows. So I had like a tie-dye pillowcase or indigo dyed pillowcase, and then kind of a shinier one. And I had bought some figurines because I thought, well, what's better than having made these big, expansive places, adventures, using the stuff in my house? Well, I'd like to give it scale. So that's why I ordered the little figurines, not knowing anything about figurines. And also, I want to say, miniature photography has been around. There are people that are really good at it, been doing this for a long time. So though I may have introduced miniature photography to much of my audience, it's not a new genre at all. So this is just the take that I had on it. So the context of the pandemic, I think, was what made it resonate so much with people.
It was so topical. I mean, we're very fortunate to have another toy photographer at SmugMug that we featured before, Jerry Business, who we made a SmugMug film about. But Jerry's whole thing is to get the toy and take that toy to the place in the correct context for that toy. Your concept is completely different, where you're generating the landscape inside your home during a pandemic. And it was just so topical and just resonated with everyone. But that if I go back a few images, like this image that I picked out, you can really see, although this one doesn't have something for scale, but you can see the resemblance of what you were kind of recreating there. And I think that adding the toys was a stroke of genius, just to give it that scale. Like this is so much fun.
Yep.
Canyons.
Pillows. I added the snow in Photoshop, but everything else was in camera.
So where do you come up with the ideas? Where do you start? How do you start with the figurines, or do you start with the materials you have? What comes first?
I start brainstorming in my sketchbook. I will start, I guess, one of two places. First, like where's the place that I've been that made me feel a certain way? So usually that's a feeling of wonder and awe. And then how could I create that in miniature with stuff that I can easily access? And I prefer not to like manipulate the stuff too much. I want it to be like obvious once you know what it is. And the other way that I work is going for a walk or going to the grocery store and just looking around at stuff. I had an idea, but sometimes, and every creative is familiar with this, sometimes your ideas come to you before you're going to bed, or while you're in the shower, or while you're at the gym. I had this idea the other night where I was like, oh, I haven't done anything with soap. So I think I'm going to try something with soap in the next few weeks. And I do try to sketch them out before I build the sets. But I'll sketch out a couple angles so that at least I have something to go from.
So it's almost this this desire to be creative with a medium, and then that comes first, and then try and make it into a concept, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
varied.
What's different about this project is that instead of photographing what's there, I'm creating the thing and then photographing it. So I have a lot more control in that way, which is interesting. So, but I do pull inspiration from like some of the places that I've been and like the photos that you showed. It's like I am trying to make it look like that in a way, or resemble that. I'm not trying to make it look like that. I'm trying to communicate the same feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. Give the sense, the feeling, the emotion of those
Exactly.
places. Absolutely. And I think that comes across. It's not like you're trying to disguise this from being brown paper. It's how that brown paper makes you feel, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This one was the photo where it clicked for a lot of people because they were all like, "Oh my God, I thought it was a canyon." They really like it got a lot of people, but it's a paper bag.
Yeah. And very simple and accessible for us to do.
So simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the light source?
Natural light.
Just natural light.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's some questions coming in. I see your questions, folk. I'll get through a few more of these, and then we'll come to these questions because there's some great questions. But let's give a few more examples of what you do, because we start moving into some very interesting mediums of using food.
Yes. I mean, this was one of my first ideas because I think anyone who works in miniature has to do a broccoli forest, right? Like, who hasn't looked at broccoli and thought, "Oh my God, they look like little
Tree.
trees."
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a fun one and one
Yeah.
of the early ones.
Yeah, it's funny. I showed my daughter this one because that's what she calls them. I've eaten all my trees, Dad. So
Yep.
like
Yep.
it's absolutely
And I
perfect.
should say that the first couple, I think I shot on a 24-70, but then I got a macro. And
Yeah.
most from this point on, I was shooting on a 90mm f2.8 macro.
You preempted one of the questions, which was from Mary. She said, "What lens do you typically
I
shoot?"
figured,
Yeah.
I figured someone would be asking.
Thanks for the question, Mary. So do you want to just repeat that? You're shooting with a 90mm macro, did you say?
90mm 2.8 macro, yeah, the Sony one.
There we go. And is that the go-to lens? Is that most of these are done with that lens now?
Yeah, all of them except for I think the ice caves, the first one.
What's the sky here?
That is a sheet.
Just the bed sheet.
Yep.
And then a snowy scene.
This was sugar sand dunes. So there's an amazing place in New Mexico called White Sands.
Okay.
And I wanted to see if I could recreate that. So I used sugar. And then in the background, I wanted to create this like far away kind of mountain looking thing. So I just organized the layers of sheets and played with the light. It's a lot of play. It's a lot of going and moving this thing here and then going and seeing what it looks like in camera and then doing that again
Right.
until you get what you want in camera. And you play a lot with depth too, because I was like moving plates of sugar to be just in the right place. And I should say with this series, I was always sharing the behind the scenes photos too, which people loved. And that was always fun because you see this image and how it looks, and then I show you the behind the scenes, and it could look like a big mess.
Yeah, table covered in salt and sheets lying all over the place, and but
exactly.
it's the perspective of the viewfinder that makes it all come together. And I guess depth of field is really really important in miniature work to give that sense of scale and depth. So you must have played with that a lot.
Yep, definitely. There were times where I was taping stuff. I mean, you use what's around. I was like stacking books and taping pieces of the materials to the side of the lens to try to get it to create some depth,
That's cool. I think you mentioned there that with this shot you were trying to replicate the white sands. And Gary was asking, do you aim to create real places you have been, or rather than fantastical places?
Sometimes places that I've been inspire these. So that's like true for this scene. And then I also did one of a glowing cave that was reminiscent of a glowworm cave in New Zealand that I had been. But it's less about the exact place and more about the feeling. So how did I feel when I was there, and how can I recreate that feeling in miniature using what I have around me?
And then it started getting even more interesting with pancakes and syrup. Right?
Yes. Well, so a goal of mine for the series, my preference artistically, I want to create work that makes you do a double take. It makes you go, whoa, where is that? You know, this was a case where I decided to step a little bit out of that because I thought, how fun would it be to have a pancake canyon and make like a syrupy river? Like, let's do it. So yeah, this was one that's a little bit more literal
Yeah.
as far as miniature goes. And it also is a cover. It ended up on a cover of Westways magazine in the States.
Right. But some of this also led to some commercial work for you, right? Where
Oh yeah, totally.
you started getting food clients and stuff coming to you to take
Yep.
this concept into the kind of commercial world and the marketing world. So, by creating this piece for yourself, it definitely led to more work, and it also, I guess, brought out your inner Willy Wonka or
Oh,
something like that, right?
completely. Oh my gosh. Actually, if anyone watching this follows me, I'm posting a new one today for a client that is like very Willy Wonka.
Oh, very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah,
That was
no,
very interesting.
stay tuned. But
Yeah.
yeah, I am grateful, and gosh, it makes sense. Like my existing clients, they wanted in when they saw me doing this. They were like, oh,
Yep.
how can we use our product? Because they could not shoot, most of them, many of them could not
Yep.
shoot in the same way that they had been doing before. So they had to get creative. And so when they saw me doing this, they were like, oh my gosh, can we hire you to do this with our product? So it led to tremendous work for me, which was so great because I wasn't traveling, you know?
Perfect. It was perfect. I mention a lot on this show how important personal projects or your creative outlet can be, not just for the improvement in your skill set, but the career opportunities at once. What you show and what you showcase to the world is what you'll get hired for.
Exactly.
So, do the things you love and showcase all the stuff, and it'll resonate. And yeah, you timed it just absolutely perfect with this. There's a lot of comments here about people drooling and getting hungry in the chat window. I should have put a disclaimer up that you may get hungry watching this show. So
True.
yeah,
This is the
this is
glowing cave I was talking
the
about.
glowing one.
Yeah. This is one where like truly the behind the scenes was a mess. Because I took a piece of paper and I poked holes in it. And then I had this lamp, you know how you can get like light bulbs that change color,
Yep.
LED light bulbs. So I had changed it to a teal color, put the paper in front, and I had like balanced it so delicately on my bed. The tinfoil, the river is tinfoil. They're standing on like a hunk of rose quartz that I have.
Right.
And then the black is rain jackets. So I had used like rain jackets for the kind of cave walls.
Yep.
And then on the right, that's shadow because I wanted it to look like it continues on. And
Yep.
so I realized that I could use the shadow for that. So, but this was, I wanted it to communicate the feeling of what it's like to stand under a million glowworms in a cave.
That's perfect. And I
So
love
thank you.
the use of the stuff you have around, as a great outdoors woman, you have Gore-Tex and you have socks, so hiking socks,
Yeah.
and you have all this stuff, and they all
Yep.
feature in your work. There's several. I don't think I have any here today, but there's several images that it's all hiking socks that is used in
Yeah.
it. So I love that you've used those items that resonate with the community that knows your work as well. The people that are passionate about outdoor photography, and they can recognize, or maybe don't recognize, that some of the elements used in your picture are stuff that they wear when they're out hiking. I think I said to you before, this was one of my favorite shots. I really love this
Thank
little
you.
moment. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite sets too. This was really a simple setup. It's the sun is a lampshade, so the lamp is on, and then the lampshade is flipped, right? So it's like this, and then there's a sheet in front of it that's creating like the circle. And then I had a cutting board, and I put tinfoil on the cutting board, and I backed it up to the lamp. So that created the reflection. And then I had a bamboo toothbrush. So I put the toothbrush there for the pier, and then the figures on top. But I wanted to create the feeling of like, I used to go fishing with my grandpa when I was a kid. So I wanted to recreate that feeling.
Yeah, and it's all about the feels. This image is just so beautiful. I mean, take away the fact that it's, toy figurines and, tinfoil and stuff. I think everybody can resonate with the feeling that you're portraying in this image, and we'd all love to be there, especially the fact that we couldn't be in these places in real life. That
Right.
really spoke to us. I really loved this image. I had no idea it was a
Thank you.
toothbrush until I obviously read the comments and the titles of the image. It's really cool. What else have we got? This one stumped me for a little bit because I wasn't sure what this is, but it's protein bars.
Yeah, this was for a client. This is commercial. This was for Go Macro. They make protein bars, macro bars. They're like macronutrients. And then in the background, I wanted to, you know how sometimes like the clouds roll over the mountains and they just have this like very like wave. Yeah. So I just wanted to play with that like blanket of clouds.
That's cool.
This is literally a blanket.
It is a blanket. That reminds me of being in Cape Town, Table Mountain, where it literally it's like a waterfall. It just pours over the top of Table Mountain, just like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. I love it. Do you eat any of this while you're?
Oh, always. Yes. And that's always a question people ask. And I'm like, do you think I'm a monster? Of course I do. And sometimes
go ahead.
Sometimes I have volunteers that help me.
Okay. That's good. I remember I did a gig many years ago for a chocolate company to photograph the chocolates for their brochure. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. When you see what I post today, you will be able to empathize what I have in my freezer. It's a lot. It's a lot. I haven't been able to fit much else in my freezer for the past couple months because of this.
Because all the supplies.
Yeah.
A few people interested about the characters. Patrick asks, do the figures have names? Do you name your little characters?
I don't name them, but it is a frequently asked question. Well, I don't name them, but I do have my favorites that I end up using over and over again, like this one here. And I Photoshopped them also. So because they're all little white people, and I want my photos to reflect the world, the diversity of the world. So I usually will change the skin tones and the hair, and I'll change the color of whatever they're wearing. I'll change the accessories. Sometimes I change the body positioning. Yeah, that's all done in post. I'll change the hair color, whatever. And it's also a question of like, where do I get them? And I get them from hobby shops around the world. So I've ordered from Germany. I've ordered from the UK a lot, but also the States. There's a fair amount of them in the States, and it's really just like Googling model train figures.
Model trains, absolutely. It's when I was a kid, we all bought model trains, and we'd create little scenes like at the station. We'd put all the people in the station, and that's exactly what I saw here. Gail asked a question. She says, "Are the figures bendable? Can you change the position?"
No,
they tend to
they're
be
not.
rigid.
They're bendable in Photoshop. No, they're not. They're rigid. And I use modeling glue on the bottoms of their feet just to get them to stay up. And also that allows you to like move them.
Yeah.
Like it won't stick permanently to wherever you put them. But these are all things that I discovered. I didn't know anything about the model train world, and now I'm a collector.
It's dangerous world.
I am looking at, I have this like storage thing on my wall now that's all of my model train figures.
Get expensive as well. Right, let's see.
They sure do. Yes.
Asparagus?
Yes, this is my first Jello Lake, though not the last. So it's gelatin. It's gelatin. I thought Jello would make a good lake, so I made some, and I used food coloring to get it to this really pretty teal color. But I was thinking about like glacial lakes in Canada. And then I thought asparagus could be like good trees, good like spruce trees or something. So
worked great. And again, the depth of field just gives that sense of depth and feeling.
Yes. It's
More
crucial.
yeah, more trees on this one. Sorry, let me just refresh
Yes.
that one.
This one is the Rosemary Forest, one of my favorites. Um, so it's just sprigs of rosemary and then baking soda is the snow.
Okay,
But the snow that's falling is Photoshop.
right.
But everything else. And I just dusted baking soda and then made a little trail with my finger and put the figures there.
Very simple, but really well done.
Totally.
This is a
Here
very
is
interesting one. I didn't get this one at first, again, until I read the comments. But tell us what these hills are made of.
sweet potatoes, they're yams,
Yeah.
and powdered sugar. I just was looking at them one day in my kitchen. I was like, those are funky. Those could be cool.
Does everything have potential now? Like, do you literally look at everything and think, how could I use that? How could I cut that up? How could I shape it?
Yes. I mean, and what a blessing that it's like showed me how to see anew. So that's been really cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is
this
fun.
one's funny. Spaghetti swamp. This was an experiment. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. But I made a bunch of pasta and put them in jars, and then this is tinfoil. Um, but I was thinking about there's this famous swamp area in Texas that I was thinking I wanted to recreate. I've never been in
Right.
person, but yeah.
More healthy food this time.
Celery.
Yeah.
Yes, celery. This was for a client. This was for One Tree Planted, which is a nonprofit that plants trees.
Mm.
Um, and they were doing a challenge on TikTok. So I made this for them and then made a TikTok video to go with it to announce the challenge.
It's great. It reminds me of, some of the great images I see from people in Vancouver or the redwoods where they're walking across these
Right.
huge fallen logs, these
I
massive
know.
redwoods and stuff. So the scale is really cool. I love that one a lot.
Thank
Now
you.
we're definitely going to get hungry. There's a few ice
Yes,
cream ones, and I think were these for a commercial client as well?
they were. Yeah, yeah. They're for an ice cream brand called Salt and Straw. They're mostly on the West Coast, but they have a few shops on the East Coast, and they're known for like these really kooky flavors.
Yep.
So they reached out because they were doing over the summer, they were doing a collection called Camp Salt and Straw, where all of their flavors were inspired by camping.
Right.
So I got to play with, there were 3 flavors, and I got to build these little kind of camping scenes. And shooting with ice cream is tough because it
Right.
melts. And this
I
is
was
all
going to ask.
real
Yeah.
ice cream.
It's
So
not food photography is very difficult. I've spent a lot of time with some of the world's best food photographers, and there a lot of it is what's the word I'm looking for? Sculptured. It's not the word I'm looking for. Stylist. They
stylist,
typically have a
yes.
stylist, where they use a
Mm-hmm.
lot of tricks of the trade to make it look incredible. But you're in your house, and literally all you have is the actual product, which isn't necessarily the easiest medium to work with when it melts.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I was I've learned a lot about food styling in the past 6 months. Because as I mean, like kind of speaking to what you were saying before, like I'm showing work using food, I'm gonna attract food brands,
Yep.
which I've continued to do. So
So you need to be very versatile and have a lot
yeah.
of skills and tricks in there. But yeah, this one's the fact that they were doing camping related stuff. It just again hit that. I'm going to use a pun here. Hit that sweet spot where all your worlds came together to create these
Yes.
incredible little
So
worlds.
the previous flavor was huckleberry cast iron cornbread, and this flavor was bacon, pancakes, and eggs. So there's bacon in this. It's like
Okay.
an egg custard based ice cream, and there's bacon and blueberry pancake pieces in this ice cream.
Okay. Very cookie flavors, as you said. Um, it's more like a pudding than a ice cream.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah,
bacon and ice
I get
cream.
that.
I'm going to start a
Yeah.
whole conversation in the chat window here because a couple of weeks ago we had a huge debate in the chat window about pineapple on pizza, but bacon and ice cream. That's
Yeah. And when we were brainstorming this, because I had a call with them, like a brief, where the head ice cream maker was telling me all about all these flavors, and I'm asking questions like, what do you want these ice cream flavors to make people feel? I'm like asking these like because I need to create images. But they actually sent me, the head ice cream maker has a cookbook of all of their flavors, and it has like their story in it. It's really interesting. But when he told me about this flavor, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like that one. But it was really good.
yeah. Let us know in the chat window, folks. What do you think?
It added a nice saltiness. I
Hmm.
don't know. And I would also be curious if anybody has had this flavor
Yeah.
from Salt and Straw when it was available, because then they could back me up.
The chat is a little delayed. It's a little bit behind our feed when it goes out. But Gary said
Oh,
to the
we'll
image
see.
where you had the jelly,
Oh,
the
the
jelly.
Jello.
He said definitely looks like Moraine Lake in Banff.
Thank
So
you.
Gary's familiar with that place, so that's great. Luisa says I'm from Portugal. Thank you for joining us. The kitchen is a good laboratory. I spend a lot of time photographing things in the kitchen. Absolutely, and Erin.
Obrigada, Luisa.
Hi, Louisa. Yeah, and you don't just stick to the kitchen. You photograph things from all over your apartment. So
Yeah, that's
Patrick
true.
Patrick says, "Don't knock it until you've tried it."
There you go.
Gary says, "How can you say no to bacon? Bacon and everything, right?" So I'm going to disappoint you when I let you know I'm vegan and don't eat meat. But anyway,
I am usually vegan too.
yeah, usually. But when it's
Well,
in ice
sometimes I
cream,
cheat.
you had to eat it for the client, right?
Yeah, but my diet is mainly plant-based.
Yeah, mine too. Right. Let's see. Do I have any more? Oh yes, I did. This one was. Do you know what this one reminded me?
What?
And I think it just because it was something that was happening in the house. We last weekend we had in the house we had a bit of a Star Trek marathon session with the kids, and this reminded me of like Ewok Village, where the Ewoks are all in the tree houses and running
Yeah.
between the trees and that type of stuff. So this one really reminded me of that. So I think the scale.
Yes. Thank you. This is eucalyptus, and I just thought it could be such a dreamy material to use. So I was kind of thinking of like a bog or like a forest, and I used tinfoil as like the river, and then I have like the big sun in the background.
So how did you discover tinfoil was a good water substitute? Did you try other things first, or
Uh,
was it
I don't think I
quite
did.
quickly
I think I
finding that?
was, yeah, I mean, you think you're like, I need something reflective. What are things that are reflective? And you just try it out.
Yep.
But I think the first one that I did with tinfoil was the glowworm, the glowworm
Hmm.
scene, and it worked really well there. So that's when I started trying it as like other water.
Yeah, and the last one I have, and I love the use of, I'm assuming, more tinfoil to create the
Yep.
gentle water coming into the shore with a
Yep.
beautiful heron. I am assuming in the.
Yeah. So this one was a recreation of a specific place, and it was a recreation of a specific image. This was
Which
for
I
a
actually
client.
have. I have the image
Oh,
next.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this was for a client in Florida that I had shot for the previous year, and they really liked the series, and they reached out and asked if there was like a way to be involved, and I was like, yes. Oh, actually, no, they were hosting a challenge as well,
Right.
like beach at home, like make a beach at home. So this was the image that was like helping to promote
Hmm.
that. So I had cut the tinfoil in this shape that you'll see from the real image, and then I used sweet potatoes in the background as like kind of sand dunes,
Yep.
um, and then a sheet, and um, yeah,
And backlit to give that lovely time of
yeah,
day feel. That's really cool. And
exactly. And then I think I
this is the
changed the
image, right?
temperature. Yes, that's the image. Um,
The
so I
inspiration.
Yeah. And oh, the heron. I cut the heron out of cardboard.
Oh yeah, we should. Yeah, the heron. Of course, we forget there's a heron. No, the
Yeah,
main
right.
subject. So it's just a flat piece of cardboard.
Yep. And then I put like a little extra piece in the back so that it was propped up.
Hmm. Very cool. Yeah, I when I came across this image, in your portfolio, I thought, I know the exact image she's used to give her the inspiration for this one. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
A wonderful look. A wonderful look at that really, really fun project. And I mentioned that it, as well as bringing you commissions from other companies, it really did go viral. You were on all sorts of news outlets and in all kinds of media with this project, yeah?
Yes, it was wild. So after the third image, it just really started to take off. It really resonated with people because we were all experiencing quarantine for the first time. Um, and I think it gave people a sense of hope and a sense of joy. Um, so after it started to pick up traction, it was the Washington Post in the States, the Telegraph in the UK, BuzzFeed. And from there, it was like global.
Yeah. Even like CNN and all
Yeah.
the big news outlets. It was incredible.
CNN, NBC, ABC, El País in Spain, Taxidia in Greece, Yedioth in Israel,
Incredible. And
El Sol
now it's
in
on SmugMug
Mexico.
Live. Now you've really made it.
I've really made it.
It's the top of the tree. Yeah, it's that's so
Perfect.
good. I'm so glad you came to tell us about it, and we are very honoured to have you host them at SmugMug and sell those images through your SmugMug
Yes.
site to the world. And again, it's a project that's been very successful with print sales as well as just bringing you other
Yeah.
work.
So true. I mean, print sales prior to this project were something that I offered, but weren't a huge part of my business. But I would say now it's like a significant passive income. I mean, passive as much as you have to keep your site updated, obviously, and you have to update it with prints and keep shooting new work and market yourself and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. But and it's amazing to have my work in people's homes and offices and bring it into their lives in that way.
Yeah, that's very good. As I say, we're very honoured to have you as using SmugMug for that. So thank you for that. Let's one last question to finish things off because it's a great question to end with. When travel opens up, where's the first place you want to go to again? Great question, Joel. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Joel. The first place I will likely go is Greece. It is the place that my soul feels at home. I first went to Greece in 2012. I was leading a trip there for teenagers, and my co-leader there, his name's Demetrius, and we became close friends. He's one of my best friends in the world, and we still lead trips there. We lead a couple trips, typically every year for my blog audience and photography community. But we already have plans because we're going to be leading a trip, hopefully in September there. So that would be my main plan, but also I'm open to go wherever. I'm like ready to travel.
I knew you were
When
going
it's
to
safe,
say. I knew you were going to say Greece. If you look
I'm
at
sure.
Erin's website and stuff, you'll see that her heart is in Greece. It's where a place she loves dearly and thinks of being a lot. So I knew you were going to say that before I
Yes.
even read you the question. But thank you so much, Erin. This has been a lot of fun. I love talking about photography, but especially the work that you've created, the inspiration you've given to a lot of people over the last year to keep creative, to stay sane in many ways when we've all been indoors and stoking people's motivation and inspiring them. I really thank you for that and for the time today.
Thank you so much. So fun. Thanks for
Yep.
joining everybody too.
Yeah, thank you everybody, and I would encourage you to check out the links below in the description where you'll find Erin's work, her websites, her social media, and check out that TED Talk, of course. You can do me a huge favor by hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode. That's the last episode for this week, but join us next week for some great guests in future episodes of SmugMug Live. But for now, Erin, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time out today. And you can tell the leaf blowers, they can turn them back on now because we haven't heard one at
I
all since you
know.
started.
They took a break. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I sent them a memo. I sent them a memo earlier saying, "Can you turn them off for an hour or so?" But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. You really do make this show what it is by asking all your great questions. So thank you for all your comments in the chat. Wherever you are in the world, as always, be kind, stay safe, look after each other, and we'll see you back here for another episode of SmugMug Live really soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Erin.
Bye.
Bye.